in mathematics, I think you learn about what functions are, but normally it's just a box, and then you give like two things or three things or any number of these are called parameters, parameters, and then the function normally has an output. So the most basic function that I can think of is addition of two numbers. For example, we have number a and number b, and then this is the addition function, and then the output is a plus b. This is the most basic type of function. Functions can be anything because they normally do not have to have the input parameters, but they always have an output parameters. That's what we talked about when we discussed about the most basic programming concepts. So that's just normal functions are. So we can go ahead in the in the code and see what exactly are functions. So let's go there. So the way we define functions in different programming languages is a bit different, but in Python, as we're learning Python, we will be defining Python using the keyword called def. It's the definition, it tells the Python that you're defining a function. So there's a difference between using a function and then defining a function. What we are doing now is defining a function. So let's say we are defining a function named add, and we expect like two variables like a and b, and then it will return, because the function is always returning something. It is performing an output on something, and it's going to return a plus b, which is the addition function in this regard. And then we are going to have, yeah, the AI is suggesting like different functions, we can have functions like subtract and multiply and print uh, name, and then yeah, something like this. It takes the parameter name and then it prints the function name. It doesn't have to return anything. So but the function normally always does something like this. We have to expect some kind of output from the function. That's the whole point of making a function. Okay. in All right, so this is how we actually define the function, and here we will be actually using the function. For example, we have to we have two numbers, for example, a equals 5 and b equals 3, and we need to store the additional value, the addition of these two values in c, in another variable called c. So we can use this as this is how we actually use the function. We type down the name of the function to indicate Python that we are actually using that using that function, excuse me, and we give the parameters inside of it. It doesn't have to be the same a and b, because this can be something else. For example, x, and for example, y, and this can be x and y. So it doesn't have to be the same as what you have defined here. This does not affect anything. It just tells the definition of the function tells Python how this function actually behaves. So what the input it receives, and how the Python should deal with these inputs, and return what Python should return. So this is just the definitions. It doesn't matter what the parameters or the variables in the parameters are. So you can give different kind of values and different kinds of variables inside of it. Doesn't matter. So what we are doing here, we are adding, we're using the addition add function, and we are passing on the x and y, and it returns as we have defined. It returns a value, and this value gets stored in c, the variable c, and we can of course define in the variable d to store the subtract the return of the subtract the return value of the subtract function. uh so because it is actually returning something. However, there's a subtle difference that I want to highlight here. The difference between the function actually doing something and actually returning something. Return means that when we use a function, it gives back. The literal definition of the word return is that it gives back a value. That's what the return means. So when it gives back a value, we can actually store it in a variable. That's the most simple part. But there are, for example, if we just remove this return function and just print out stuff, this here will not actually amount to anything. The D, I don't think the D will have anything inside of it. But let's try to like, print out D and see what we get. So let's save it. Let's run it. Okay, so let's see what is going on in here. So we have a definition of a function called add, and we have a definition of a function called subtract, and we also have a definition of a function that we did not use. We just defined this function. So as we have defined this function and did not use this function, this specific thing does not have anything, like, it does not get printed. The only thing that gets printed are the functions that we actually use. For example, here we use the function subtract here. This part, we use the function subtract, and what the function does is it does not return anything. It just prints out this part. So subtracting a from b. So it's just what the value of a, the value of b is here, and the value of a is here. It's just printing out this stuff. It's not returning anything. As it's not returning anything, we are defining the variable d with a function which is not defining anything. So that's why the value of the d remains empty, because it is expecting something, but it's not getting anything from the function. So what does this variable d have? Nothing, none, nil. So that's why when we print out like d, we get none. So that's the, like, basics of function. I will not go much more, like, in depth into it, because there's like nothing like more interesting about it to say. Instead, I will see you on the next video, which is about lists and array. So this will be a very interesting topic indeed. So goodbye.